Hello and welcome. My name is Nicholas and this is Literally Graphic. And today I will be giving my initial thoughts on the manga series My Brother's Husband, which I believe came over and was translated fairly recently. If you watch any other manga channels, I watch a few. It was definitely popping up there everywhere for a while, and I probably should have gotten to it sooner, but such is life. My Brother's Husband is by Gengoroh Tagame, and today I'll probably be more than a little bit scattered because I'm going to try and give a little context for this manga that also inspired a lot of feeling and thinking in me personally. So let's get started. To give a brief synopsis of the premise, since I found myself even confused more than once between the inside flap and people talking about it. This book is written from the perspective of a probably middle-aged Japanese man named Nyachi, who is heterosexual, a father and primary caregiver to a young girl, an amicable ex-husband, someone who can live off real estate income, and an identical twin to the gay brother mentioned in the title. This gay twin brother, Ryoji, long before the start of this comic, moved to Canada and eventually got married to a man named Mike Flanagan. Such a Canadian name, I guess. He really should have probably been named Gord. Most of the middle-aged men I know in Canada are named Gord, or presumably Gordon. Ryoji then died. And why he died, I either missed it or it wasn't mentioned. It's not that important, besides the fact that he did die, but now Mike has made his way to Japan to learn more about his husband's life and family. And while I am a fairly enthusiastic reader of manga, I am by no means an expert in any way, especially when it comes to same-sex relationships in manga. So definitely take everything I have to say with a grain of salt and seek out some more authoritative views on anything you find interesting, which is kind of how my research has gone up until this point, though there's still lots to learn. Looking at what I had gathered before reading this manga, with a bit more that I have learned through and since reading this manga, despite the fact that yaoi and boy love in general are is a fairly popular genre, it is also one of the few places I have ever seen the male body and male relationships served up to the female gaze in any way compared to how women, straight or lesbian, are too often treated in my own culture. And so the fact is that despite the fact that yaoi is such a popular genre, this is a genre dominated by non-gay writers writing for predominantly female audiences and doesn't really represent the culture or acceptance or rejection of the culture overall. It's really fetishized. Manga about gay men by gay men is actually a much smaller market that is pretty niche and doesn't seem to have been represented at all in translated work until recently. And a lot of it seems to be very adult and, I'm told, sadistic. So again, not like something super mainstream. And this, obviously, with the caveat of someone who has really not looked into the market that much as it exists in English. And if you have any recommendations, I would certainly appreciate it, especially if I have to look beyond my library and actually purchase some of my own works. I am very interested in diverse own voices representation, and this really is something I need to put more work into, so you certainly don't need to tell me. Gengoroh Tagame is in fact a mangaka who has worked in this genre for some time and is someone who himself is an openly gay man living in a society that does not think very highly of his sexuality. My Brother's Husband is a very diplomatic mainstream manga aimed at not only telling a nice story, but also showing how gay men are just like everyone else, because again, even if yaoi seems to point in the opposite direction, according to a lot of the stuff I've heard about this book, gay men still face a tough uphill battle in Japanese society. It's a bit hard for me just to necessarily wrap their heads around it. There does seem to be several points of difference between homophobia in Japan and homophobia in North America. Despite its rather straightforward and perhaps simple premise of a single father and his brother-in-law and his young daughter, I was really moved by this comic. I certainly hope most of the people watching this video and reading this book in general realize that LGBTQ plus people are just like everyone else and not necessarily need that message to be communicated to them through this book. But my own transition from conservative anti-LGBTQ upbringing to accepting and even celebrating of diverse sexualities and genders of other people, and even including myself, wasn't too long ago, and this book just ripped those scabs right off. But I would say ultimately in a good way, a good reminder of the journey and perhaps some of the internalized homophobia I still have and to deal with. Otherwise, this is a very everyday slice of life sort of manga, although it does follow a pretty tight, easy to follow timeline, so it's not a slice of life manga that's particularly difficult to follow, which some of them can be. Looking through other reviews, one's appreciation for the particularly decompressed style of day-to-day manga seems highly related to how much one will enjoy this. So as I said, it's easy to follow, but I'm not sure if it's necessarily going to be a great introductory manga. I'm not sure if it's going to be a great introductory manga unless someone is really interested and intrigued by everyday life. I mean, it's definitely something that drew me into manga, and I'm sure it draws a lot of other quiet homebody types into manga, but you know, lots of people like action. Well, flipping through this book, it should be fairly easy to tell that Tagame is a pretty skilled mangaka. That said, his depiction of well-muscled naked men was the biggest thing I had to get over in agreeing with the black back flap that calls this an all-ages manga. Bit of a hurdle. And while I do feel like it does push a bit at the more objective standards of all-agedness here in North America as compared to, say, Japan, it also provided me a good opportunity to take a sledgehammer to my inner prude. And so those, yes, are my initial meandering thoughts about how a story about a man, his daughter, that's also great breaking sort of representation there, and his brother-in-law, you know, just getting to know each other, re-examining their internal assumptions, figuring family drama out. His daughter's really cute though, so yeah. See ya, bye. And as always, I would like to acknowledge that for the most part, all of my videos are filmed and produced on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, an Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation, land covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant.